Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The key hit the floor and spun toward my shoes. "I'm done," she said, shoulders square, breath steady. I'm Mark 28 and my chest went tight. Behind her, Mia clutched a duffel and watched me breathe. "Keep hosting my sister," she added without blinking. Her phone lit in her palm with a heart. I reached for it and she snapped my wrist. "You don't get answers," she murmured, eyes bright with victory. I stepped back and felt the door press my spine. Mia shifted her weight like she might bolt. "Am I safe staying here?" she asked, voice thin. No one answered and the hallway swallowed our air. 2 weeks for Mia, my ex continued, jaw locked. "No rent, no parties, no drama," she drummed each word. "What changed?" I asked, and the question scraped me raw. She smiled like a judge who loves the gavel. My phone buzzed on the table and then again. A photo arrived from a blocked account with timing. Her mouth on a stranger's mouth outside my building. The caption read, "He pays while you play, enjoy." Mia saw it and pressed her lips until white. "She told me you already knew," her eyes begged me. "I didn't," I said, and heat crawled up. Something in me stood up and reached for steel. The buzzer howled once, then twice like a dare. A car idled out front with impatient rhythm. Same stranger leaned on the hood and grinned. My ex lifted another box like this was logistics. I chained the door and cracked it an inch. "You planned this," I said as my throat burned. "Helping Mia get stable," she replied, smile careless and thin. The guy outside clapped once like he owned the stairs. Mia moved beside me and anchored her feet. "Safety meant no surprises," she said and faced her. My ex tilted her head and tasted the room. "Safety costs," she breathed, and the price felt rigged. I slid my phone up with my thumb hovering. "Return the key, take your boxes, leave now." The stranger pushed off the car and adjusted nothing. Neighbors cracked their doors, hunger bright in their eyes. "You'll keep Mia or I start talking," she warned. "Talk about what?" I asked and kept my frame. "You grabbed my phone and tried to control me." Her smile sharpened and the lie slid easy. Mia swallowed hard and then straightened her back. "She told me to watch you for weakness," she whispered. "She wanted leverage for a better lease, remember?" My ex flinched and the stranger finally stopped smiling. I unhooked the chain and stepped into the frame. "Keys on the mat, boxes go with you." She held my stare and then tossed metal down. They rang once and every neighbor leaned closer. The guy edged forward with a slow, careless swagger. I raised the phone and the red timer blinked. "Leave now," I said, every syllable set. He stalled, then stepped back and the air cracked. My ex bent, grabbed the box and hissed softly. "You will regret this when Mia cries," she whispered. Mia planted herself between us and refused to bend. "I won't cry for you again," her voice cut. They retreated down the hall with brittle laughter. The engine outside revved, eager for an exit. I locked the door and felt my hands shake. Mia stared at the keys like they might bite. I wanted revenge, sharp and fast but empty. The photo still burned on my screen like acid. Mia breathed in and waited for my next move. I turned the phone face down and chose ground. Fists hammered the door like a drumline on caffeine. Mia flinched and grabbed my forearm, nails biting skin. "Open up or I call building security," a voice barked. I looked through the peephole and saw the superintendent, plus someone behind him. I slid the latch and cracked the door wider. My ex leaned in the hallway with folded arms. "Noise complaint and property check," the super announced, clipboard tucked under his elbow. I felt the trap tighten and chose my words carefully. "Inspection needs notice," I said, keeping the gap narrow. She sighed and presented a printed email with a flourish. The super nodded like the paper absolved everything. Behind him, the stranger from earlier filmed us with lazy confidence. Mia stepped up, chin set like a tiny shield. "No consent today," she said and planted a foot. The super hesitated and glanced at the camera. "Then I'll log refusal," he muttered, but he didn't leave. A ping rattled my pocket, unknown number, video attachment waiting. I played it with the volume low near my chest. My ex was in my living room last week, unlocking with a spare. The clip ended with her smirking at the lens like a signature. I lifted the phone so the super could see. Unauthorized entry recorded, I said, voice steady and cold. He leaned closer and cleared his throat twice. We'll handle this downstairs, he whispered, eyes dodging the camera. She laughed and tapped the stranger's shoulder for emphasis. Post it, she said, hunger in every syllable. The stranger's thumb hovered like a vulture waiting for movement. Mia slid between them and me with surprising courage. Back away from our door, she ordered with quiet threat. He smirked but took a step, testing boundaries like a child. You don't scare me, he muttered, phone still raised. I recorded him recording us because doubles matter in fights. The super finally retreated to the elevator, shoes squeaking. Handle your domestic situation, he tossed over his shoulder. The doors closed and left the three of us locked. She stared at me like a dealer who knew the card. Hand over any copies, I said without blinking. She twirled a ring of metal and grinned like a magician. Only if Mia stays happy, she teased, eyes on me. Mia's breath stuttered and the stranger leaned in for tension. I pulled a small safe from the closet and clicked it open. Inside was the signed sublet agreement and a USB drive. I placed them on the table where both could see. Evidence beats leverage, I said, and her smile faltered. Mia touched my elbow and gestured toward the guest room. Check under the outlet, she whispered with urgency. I pried the faceplate and found a tiny recorder. The stranger's eyelids fluttered like he recognized the model. Planting devices crosses lines, I said with my phone up. She shrugged like boundaries were for other people. Prove ownership, she tossed out, eyes bright with challenge. I set the recorder beside the USB and hit play. Static, then voices, then her giving instructions to someone. Mia turned pale but didn't look away. Cry if he resists, the whisper on the tape advised. The stranger shifted his weight and stared at the floor. I opened the building portal app and logged a report. Unauthorized entry, coercion attempt, hidden electronics. I attached the video and the audio clip. A case number popped up and bought us a breath. She lunged to snatch the recorder and I reacted. My palm met her wrist and redirected the grab. The device skidded but stayed on the table humming. The stranger lifted his camera and threatened to upload. Do it and I file a restraining order today, I warned. My tone landed like a door slammed in a storm. He swallowed and pulled his phone back slowly. She watched him retreat and finally lost some color. Mia walked to the couch and stood very tall. Ground rules, she announced and counted on her fingers. No contact through him, no entry without approval, no pressure. Each rule hung in the air like a checkpoint waiting for stamps. I printed the rules from my laptop and laid them out. Sign and take your things, I said in a flat rhythm. She stared at the page, then at me, then at Mia. Her pen hovered, then touched paper and paused before committing. Another alert flashed, reply from the building office. Security requested we hold position and await a call. I felt the room tighten again like a noose. She noticed my glance and smiled with too many teeth. Change the locks today or lose your deposit, she hissed. Mia's nostrils flared and she took one step closer. You already broke in, she shot back with a blade. The stranger opened the door a fraction to hear better. I took photos of the recorder and the signed rules. I emailed them to myself and our landlord immediately. Redundancy meant survival in conflicts like this one. The stranger's camera drifted down as evidence stacked higher. Her phone buzzed with a call from a contact labeled lawyer. She answered on speaker and paced 2 slow circles. A male voice advised distance and documentation right now. She clicked off and her confidence evaporated at the edges. 3 nights, I said to Mia without looking away. We find you a new place with your own lace. Mia nodded once and kept her hands steady. That plan felt like a ladder in a burning room. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell, security moving quickly now. The stranger slipped into the elevator and jabbed the button. My ex pocketed the spare and hesitated at the threshold. Last chance to play nice, she whispered, eyes darting. I opened the apartment door wide and waited in silence. 2 guards stepped onto our floor with hands folded. My ex looked from them to me and to Mia. She placed the spare on the mat and forced a grin. See you in court, she muttered and backed toward the elevator. The doors closed and her reflection shattered into nothing. Mia exhaled and rested her forehead against the wall. I stared at the recorder and knew round 2 was coming. My phone blared again and again like it owed someone money. Caller ID showed the leasing office with an urgent flag. Come now, the manager demanded through a tight throat. Mia grabbed her coat and nodded without asking why. We reached the lobby and froze at the sight. My ex waited with a neat folder and a smile. The stranger lounged near the mailboxes with that lazy posture. Security hovered by the turnstile and watched our feet. Domestic disturbance report, the manager announced with stiff lips. She slid an edited clip. Crossed the counter for review. In it I looked aggressive while she flinched artfully. The cut hid her lunge and my deflection completely. Mia tapped the screen and rewound to the jump. There, she pointed and the seam flickered like a blinking lie. I pulled up the raw footage and mirrored it. Two guards leaned closer while the stranger lost interest. The manager folded her hands and cleared a path. Both parties remain apart until a hearing, she declared. Key control will be audited today with a locksmith present. My ex clapped once with a bright grin that stung. Fine by me, I replied and kept the lens running. Mia squeezed my elbow and shifted her stance forward. The stranger rolled his eyes and checked the elevator numbers. A guard wrote notes and watched our shoulders for trouble. Upstairs, the locksmith arrived with a metal case. He swapped cylinders while documenting every movement precisely. I signed the work order and stored the receipt digitally. Mia inspected the bolts and nodded like a lieutenant. 3 messages landed as we checked the doors. One from a private account threatened to leak my job. Another hinted at a complaint filed with HR already. The third listed my address with a countdown 4 hours. Screenshots now, I told Mia and handed her my phone. She captured everything and forwarded it to the case file. A knock rattled the door before we finished uploading. 2 officers announced a wellness check requested anonymously. I opened with the chain engaged and both hands visible. Report of yelling and possible coercion, the taller one said. Mia held up the signed house rules like a shield. I played the raw clip in the recorder audio back. The officers glanced at each other and relaxed a notch. Document everything, the shorter one advised with a shrug. If they escalate beyond messages, call immediately, he added. They left after logging our statements and badge IDs. My email pinged with a note from HR next. Allegations received regarding controlling behavior at home. They requested a response within 24 hours. I breathed once and built a timeline with links. Mia paced the hall and chewed her lip hard. She warned me about corporate pressure, she muttered. She said fear ruins people faster than lawsuits, she continued. I heard a shape to the threat and prepared for it. We drafted a concise reply with attachments and timestamps. I removed adjectives and left only movements and evidence. Before sending, another text arrived with a street photo. The stranger's car sat idling outside our building again. Mia lifted the blinds, then dropped them quickly. Not just watching, she whispered, eyes stuck to the floor. Her backpack vibrated with a rhythm that felt wrong. We emptied it and found a small black square. I held the square and felt the weight of tracking. Mia's face tightened and she swallowed hard twice. We placed the device in a foil pouch quickly. Then we walked it to the security desk together. Found this in her bag, I told the guard. He logged the find and called the officers back. Leave it here, he suggested, we'll hand it over. Mia exhaled and uncrossed her arms for the first time. Back upstairs, another message buzzed with a location ping. Whoever tracked her thought she still stood in the lobby. Let them follow the decoy, I said and set my jaw. Mia locked her door and began packing in focused bursts. She loaded essentials in 2 quick trips across the hall. No clutter, no lingering, just purposeful passes and checks. I filed a stalking report through the city portal. A new number appeared and assigned a detective by morning. A thud echoed from the stairwell and halted us. Footsteps paused outside, then moved to the fire door. I texted security and filmed the peephole for proof. The steps faded only when a neighbor yelled down the corridor. We returned to the kitchen and counted remaining keys. 1 set missing again despite the earlier drop-off downstairs. I called the locksmith back and requested a secondary rekey. He agreed to return within the hour with new parts. Do you still want me here tonight? Mia asked quietly. Her hand stayed steady but her eyes searched mine. Yes, I answered, you leave after we scout options. She nodded and tightened the straps on her bag. A call came from the leasing manager with clipped tone. They scheduled a mediation at noon with both parties. Remote participation allowed and recording permitted for accuracy. I agreed and blocked the time on my calendar. The elevator dinged and the locksmith hustled in again. He replaced the hardware and sealed the spare access. We tested each door twice and checked the frames. Mia signed as witness and took a photo for records. Another knock, not police this time, but firm and fast. I peeked through glass and saw a courier with paperwork. He handed over a sealed envelope with a smirk. Inside was a cease and desist D. Rafted sloppily and loud. I scanned the lines and almost laughed at the stretch. It accused me of intimidation through lawful recording and locks. Mia rolled her eyes and pointed at the typos sprinkled everywhere. We photographed each page and forwarded it to management. Dusk settled early and the building seemed to hold its breath. The decoy tracker still pinged downstairs like a lure. I waited for the next strike and planned counters. Mia brewed tea and watched the door like a sentry. At 9 my phone buzzed with a final message. A selfie of the stranger inside a ride service car. Caption read, "Coming for a visit, doors mean nothing." Below it a screenshot of a master key blank. I recorded a short video response with clear framing. Any entry triggers trespass and police involvement immediately. I tagged the building manager and the case number. Then I sent it and braced for footsteps and sirens. Mia gripped the bat we kept near the couch. Her jaw set and her shoulders squared like armor. We killed the decoy by calling security to retrieve it. Silence followed and stretched until the clock hit midnight. That was when the power flickered once and steadied again. A breaker pulled, then pushed back by someone testing nerves. I grabbed my flashlight and checked the hallway wiring. Mia covered the peephole and mouthed one word, "Listen." Air moved beyond the door like a quiet animal. Metal scraped softly against metal in patient strokes. A thin rod probed the lock and tapped something delicate. I raised my phone and started the timer in one tap. Now, I whispered and triggered the alarm on my system. The hall erupted with an automated bark and flashing strobes. Footsteps pounded toward the stairwell and clanged down hard. A voice cursed, then silence returned with a mean promise. The alarm still pulsed when my phone lit with a badge. "Stay where you are," a clipped voice ordered on speaker. "Security has someone in custody near the stairwell now." Mia gripped the handle and waited for the next beat. We hustled to the lobby with videos queued up. 2 guards had the new guy against a wall. A thin steel pick sat in a plastic bag. He stared past us like this was a game he'd win. A detective stepped forward and flashed a number card. "Who owns the car outside?" he asked without blinking. "Rental," the guy muttered while chewing his cheek. The detective raised an eyebrow and glanced at his tablet. "Booked under your ex's account," he said with patience. Silence stretched and I felt the balance finally shift. Mia leaned closer to the detective and pointed upstairs. "Tracker found in my bag earlier," she said, hands steady. He noted the case number and called for pickup. Then he turned to me and held out one palm. "Show me your raw footage from tonight's lock attempt." I played it frame by frame and watched his jaw set. The elevator opened and she walked out smiling hard. A woman in a blazer trailed her with a briefcase. "Client requests immediate return of personal items," the blazer opened. The detective cut in and asked about the rental. My ex blinked once and fixed her posture mid-breath. "Work expense," she answered, eyes sliding toward the guy. He scratched his neck and looked at the floor. The detective logged the inconsistency and asked for keys. "I surrendered earlier," she replied and kept her chin high. Building records show a missing master for 10 minutes. The manager stepped from behind the desk with a logbook. "Checked out with my stamp, but not by me." I filmed the page while the room tightened around her. The guy shifted his weight and coughed into his fist. "Never touched your doors," he offered, eyes rimmed with bravado. The detective held up the sealed bag with the pick. "Explain this then," he said and nudged it gently. No answer, just a smug grin that finally looked shaky. Mia lifted her phone and opened the recording from earlier. A neighbor's clip showed a gloved hand testing our lock. The blazer stepped between everyone and adjusted her collar. Allegations aside, my client fears retaliation, she announced smoothly. We're requesting mutual distance until mediation concludes. The detective nodded and began writing a temporary separation order. Mia touched my elbow and angled her body toward her sister. You offered me money to stage tears, she said quietly. Say it to him right now and stop hiding. My ex swallowed hard and rolled her wrist like stalling might save time. Family matters aren't for the lobby, she replied, voice brittle. The detective looked up and clicked his pen shut. Family stops when tracking devices appear, he answered evenly. Do you dispute the device came from your circle? She stared at the guy who wouldn't meet her eyes. He shrugged and offered a faint laugh that died quickly. The detective signaled a guard and requested a property search. They retrieved the rental and photographed the console compartment. Another tracker, same model, same adhesive pattern. The guard lifted it with tweezers while cameras watched. Mia's jaw tightened, but she didn't step back. I filed another attachment to the case before anyone breathed. My phone rang with the mediation start time blinking. Join from your unit, the manager instructed by intercom. No contact in the halls until that session. We turned for the elevator while the group kept arguing. Inside the car, Mia pressed her knuckles against the rail. I'm done covering for her, she said without flinching. I'll give a full statement during the call. I nodded and felt something inside align like a lock. Back home, the meeting link opened with 4 tiles. Manager at the top, lawyer beside her, detective muted. My ex appeared last and smiled like a contest host. Let's resolve this like adults, she began with practiced calm. I uploaded the hallway video with a timestamp overlay. The manager requested the neighbor clip next for context. The detective added the tracker photos into the folder. The lawyer adjusted her glasses and asked about injuries. None inside the apartment, I answered and kept my shoulders square. Repeated attempts to enter without consent documented. Electronic devices planted to monitor movements documented. Her mouth tightened and she glanced off-screen for guidance. Mia leaned into her camera and spoke directly to it. She told me to pressure him for benefits, she stated. She paid the guy to show up and intimidate. Her voice didn't shake and the room felt colder. The lawyer pivoted fast and floated a new angle. Unauthorized occupant raises liability for the lease, she offered. The manager shook her head and lifted a form. Temporary guest registered last week with signatures and dates. My ex exhale. Ed threw her nose and tried a smile. Then I withdraw my complaint, she announced abruptly. The detective unmuted and placed a hand to his ear. Too late, the report stands, investigation continues. The call ended with action items and a deadline. Security patrol increased, key room audit scheduled at dawn. We would receive written notice of the separation terms. The screen went dark, but the apartment didn't relax. A new email pinged from HR with bold subject lines. Interim leave during review of external allegations, it read. Paid but isolated from systems starting immediately. The timing felt directed, and I knew who pulled the string. Use this, Mia said and slid a handwritten checklist. Tomorrow we change routes and vary times, she added. Then I view apartments and sign one alone. I agreed because control returns in small firm steps. Down the hallway, a door opened and closed quickly. Footfalls paused near our place, then moved away. I recorded the time and added it to the ledger. My ex was losing ground, so escalation was guaranteed. Another knock came softer than any earlier knock. A neighbor we barely knew held out a flash drive. Thought you'd want this, he whispered with eyes on the floor. Your camera caught their rehearsal last night on 9. We plugged it in and watched a dry run unfold. The guy practiced with a rod while she timed him. They laughed when a neighbor passed and didn't look twice. The footage ended with her saying one clear sentence. Tomorrow we finish this before sunrise, her voice promised. I paused the frame and stared at the timestamp. The plan required access we had just sealed, which meant someone else upstairs still had a key. I knocked on 9 and kept my thumb on record. The neighbor cracked the door and watched my shoes. Your flash drive saved us, I told him, voice low. Who else upstairs keeps spares? I asked and waited. He glanced at the camera in the corner and nodded. Laundry room has a key box with a busted hinge. People borrow when staff is thin, he murmured, shoulders tense. That was the opening I needed, and he knew it. Mia met me by the elevator with her bag zipped. We test the laundry room now, she whispered, eyes alert. I pressed the button and felt the floor shift under us. If someone watched, they would show their hand in minutes. The door to the laundry room hung crooked on one screw. A rusty key box hugged the wall like a bad secret. I filmed the hinge and the empty hooks inside. 3 tags missing labeled master, utility, and storage. Footsteps scraped behind us and halted at the threshold. The superintendent appeared with a forced smile and a clipboard. Maintenance check, he offered, tone too bright for morning. Mia folded her arms and stared past him at the hooks. You signed out masters after hours, I said without warmth. He blinked twice and pretended to read the clipboard. Must be a misprint, he muttered and turned sideways. I stepped left with him and blocked the exit. Open the sign-out log on your phone, I asked. He hesitated, then tapped through screens with jittery fingers. A photo of yesterday's log filled the display. The initials weren't his, but his code authorized the release. Mia's jaw set and she pulled her camera closer. Who else has your credentials? She asked, voice steady. He scratched behind his ear and avoided our eyes. Front desk trainee, he mumbled, and that told me enough. This is where the leak lives, I said, pulse even. We call security now or you walk us there. He dropped his shoulders like a tent collapsing in wind. Follow me, he muttered, and led us to the service corridor. We turned a corner and almost collided with her. My ex stood by a cart with a paper cup. The stranger lounged against the wall with a duffel. The trainee froze beside the cart and hid his badge. Morning tour, she chirped, but her eyes tracked our phones. I lifted mine and started a live stream to the case folder. Mia moved to the side and set her stance. The superintendent wiped his palms and looked at the floor. You used his code last night, I said, no ornament. The trainee swallowed and stared at the cart wheels. Company policy allows emergency access, my ex answered sharply. Show the emergency, I said, and waited for proof. The stranger unzipped the duffel with a slow grin. Inside lay blank key blanks and a cheap hand punch. He slid a glance toward the trainee like they practiced. Mia's eyes didn't leave his hands for a second. Security rounded the corner with crisp steps and steady faces. Hands visible, one ordered, voice hard enough to hold shape. The trainee lifted his arms and dropped his badge. My ex stepped back and folded into a smile that slipped. The detective arrived behind them with a small recorder. Keep talking, he said, and pointed to my live stream. I repeated the timeline while he labeled each clip. The stranger SN. The duffel closed and shifted his feet. Let's trade, my ex offered, tone quick and bright. You drop the tracker claim, we drop the HR mess. Mia scoffed and laughed once like a punchline landed late. Not bargaining, she replied, and the hall went quiet. The detective nodded toward the trainee with a small gesture. Why the code share, he asked in a flat rhythm. Told it was a surprise inspection, the trainee blurted quickly. Promised shift swaps and cash, he added, face crumpling. From who, I asked, though I already knew. He flicked his gaze to my ex and then down. The detective marked the response with a time stamp. Security lifted the duffel and cataloged each tool without pause. My ex reached for the card and steadied herself. You're ruining your own lease, she tried, voice thin. Management hates drama in hallways, she added, eyes sharp. The superintendent winced, and the trainee whispered an apology. An intercom crackled and the manager's voice filled the corridor. All parties report to the conference room now. Bring the items and hold them until intake. The detective gestured us forward and everyone started moving. In the conference room, the manager spread forms across the table. Statement, consent to the audit, acknowledgement of patrol changes. We each signed and passed documents without small talk. My ex kept her pen above the line like a wand. The detective placed the duffel on the table and opened it. Any reason these were in your path this morning? He asked. She pressed her lips and stared at the ceiling for courage. Not mine, she answered, and the trainee shook his head. I slid the flash drive from 9 across the surface. Add this rehearsal video to the pile, I said. The manager watched the screen and scribbled notes in the margin. The footage showed timing drills and whispered directions by the stair. Your voice instructs the entry, the manager observed calmly. Key room access records confirm unusual activity matching this timeline. She turned to security and pointed at the door. Escort these three to wait for patrol, she ordered. Mia leaned close and breathed into my ear. She will pivot to family again, she murmured carefully. Do not argue on love, argue on paper. I nodded and folded my arms across my chest. HR pinged my inbox while they waited with security. Your access remains suspended during external investigation, the message read. Submit additional context if available before end of day. I attached the corridor capture and the trainee confession immediately. The detective returned from a call and looked composed. Vehicle search permitted by the rental contract, he announced. Trunk contains 2 more blanks and a list of units. My apartment number sat underlined twice with a star. My ex stared at the list and finally stopped breathing even. She reached for the paper and met the detective's palm. Enough, he said and slid it back into a folder. Mia watched the stranger, who suddenly avoided every camera. The manager issued the separation notice in firm language. No approach within 50 feet of their door, she read. No contact beyond counsel or law enforcement, she added. Violation triggers immediate removal from the building. We left the room without gloating and took the elevator. Inside, Mia leaned her head back and inhaled slowly. Apartment tour start in an hour, she whispered, bright and focused. After that, I pack what's left and go. The doors opened and the superintendent caught my sleeve. I'm filing my own report about the code misuse, he said. Wasn't supposed to happen and I can prove it. He looked wrecked but ready to stand up at last. Back upstairs, I checked the deadbolt in the camera angle. Mia rolled her suitcase to the door and tested the weight. 3 places on my list, she said, eyes forward. Short lease, no links to her verified locks. My phone buzzed once more with a blocked number. Walk outside and talk like a man, the text flashed. I showed Mia and flagged it for the detective. Outside could be a lure or the last mistake. We waited by the peephole until the hallway cleared. Then we moved together with measured steps and open eyes. I carried nothing that could be twisted into threat. Mia kept her camera up and steady like a shield. The elevator opened on the lobby with a quiet ding. The stranger stood near the exit with hands in pockets. He watched us approach and smirked without commitment. Behind him, a squad car rolled to the curb and idled. He took 1 step forward and then stopped mid-stride. The detective emerged from the side door with 2 uniforms. Conversation moves to the station, he announced, expression level. The stranger glanced behind us and saw the cameras waiting. He tried one last angle with a shrug and a half grin. Just a misunderstanding, nothing personal here. Mia whispered near my shoulder without looking. Gee, his way. Everything personal stops today, right here, right now. They cuffed him without struggle and read the basics. My ex watched from across the street with folded arms. Her chin lifted, then trembled, then lifted again. A tow truck hooked the rental while she called someone. Mia squeezed my hand and pointed at the rideshare lane. Time for tour, she said, voice bright but firm. I nodded and felt the weight shift off my ribs. The day wasn't safe yet, but the ground finally held. The hearing opened with our faces stacked in squares. A clerk read the case number and warned about recording. My ex leaned toward her camera and tried a soft smile. I shared the live folder link and waited for impact. Her lawyer launched first with a polished monologue about fear. The judge held up a palm and cut the air. Evidence, not adjectives, he said, and the room exhaled. I cued the clip of last night's lock attempt and pressed play. The neighbor's rehearsal video followed without commentary. Mia took her turn and delivered details in crisp beats. The list of unit numbers filled the screen with dates. The judge glanced down, then issued a temporary order with teeth. 50 feet, no messages, no intermediaries, he instructed with finality. Our officers will serve copies by end of day. Her mouth tightened and the lawyer stared at a blank notepad. We signed digitally and the session ended without farewells. My phone rang before I closed the laptop lid. HR wanted a live clarification about the complaint file. I sent the case link and the hallway footage immediately. They lifted the hold and requested weekly updates until closure. Mia zipped her suitcase shut and checked her list twice. Lease meeting in 30 minutes, she said with quick energy. We rode down together and met the agent in the lobby. The paperwork took 10 minutes and ended with a handshake. Outside, a rideshare idled while Mia confirmed the address. Across the street, my ex watched with a static stare. A patrol car rolled past and slowed near the hydrant. She turned away, then glanced back when Mia waved goodbye. At the new building, Mia met the landlord in the foyer. She read each clause, asked direct questions, then initialed carefully. I kept quiet and filmed the keys changing hands. Her posture rose when the door clicked behind us both. We moved boxes in 3 quick runs without chatter. No detours, no pauses, just up and down. On the last run, a message pinged my screen. "Come alone to the garage," the unknown number wrote. I forwarded it to the detective and kept walking. Mia saw my jaw tighten and tapped her pocket. "Not today," she whispered and tightened her grip on the handle. We finished the load and signed the move-in inventory online. In the elevator, a neighbor stepped in and held the door. He glanced at Mia, then at my phone recording. "Your old building called about key access," he muttered. "My cousin works maintenance, expect an audit report tonight." Back at the curb, the stranger's friend leaned on a scooter. He flicked ash and grinned without humor or patience. "Boss wants her back in your place by Friday." I stared at the camera on the pole and raised my voice. "Violation equals arrest," I said with deliberate pace. He looked up, saw the lens, then shoved off fast. Mia inhaled like a pressure valve finally released. "I'm not portable leverage anymore," she said, eyes steady. We returned upstairs to her new apartment and locked twice. She unpacked essentials and stacked the rest for morning. "First night alone," she said, testing the words for truth. I nodded and waited to see if relief held. Her phone blinked with a new contact request. The profile name matched her sister's old handle. Mia stared for a beat, then pressed decline without hesitation. "I'll speak through counsel only," she whispered, almost surprised. I walked back home along a route with cameras. The building manager met me near the office door. "Key room footage shows the trainee taking orders," she said. "Written statements arrive tomorrow, your copy included." Upstairs, a bouquet sat outside my threshold with a note. No card, just a printed apology with careful spacing. I photographed it, then dropped everything at the front desk. The concierge sealed it for evidence and logged the time. Night settled and quiet finally held for more than minutes. I scrubbed my phone of shared accounts and old logins. Deleted threads vanished like knots turning loose in water. One message remained unread, blinking at the bottom. I opened it and saw a single sentence from her. "Remember who you were before Mia moved in." I felt the pull, then watched it pass without teeth. I blocked the number and stood still until it faded. Morning broke with the mediation summary in my inbox. The separation conditions became permanent for 90 days. A court date waited on the calendar if breached. The detective's note add: D1 line, hold steady and document. Mia texted a photo from her kitchen with a thumbs up. "Sign the utility forms," she wrote, "lock codes changed already." I answered with a single checkmark and a quiet grin. Distance can rebuild people faster than promises ever could. Before work, I carried her spare from my drawer to management. They scanned it, bagged it, and filed the chain of custody slip. I initialed the line and felt weight leave my ribs. The clerk smiled like we finally closed a door that mattered. On my way back, I passed the laundry room hinge. Maintenance replaced the box and sealed it with numbered ties. A fresh log hung beside it with new protocols. I took a photo and stored it with the rest. I unlocked my place and listened for anything off. Nothing moved, nothing whispered, just my own breath. I set the phone on the table and let it rest. Then I opened the door again and stepped forward without looking back.